How to replace the left crank on a spinner L series or spinner sport or spinner fit or spinner sport series bike. To start, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and tighten the knob to apply resistance to the flywheel. This will help with the replacement, and you can use the bike as leverage to help you with the installation. So crank it down. Tools needed: a 13 millimeter or a socket wrench. Some might be a 13, some might be a 14. Depends on the bike you have, but for this bike it's a 13. A flathead screwdriver, a crank puller, a 22 millimeter crank puller, and a crescent wrench to help. So first, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and take off this cap. Usually you just have to pop it off. So there you go. That'll expose the bolt that holds the crank arm in place. What you want to do now is just go ahead and loosen that bolt. Just give it a few turns. It might be a little hard to get off the first time, so you might have to apply some force, but once you've done that, it should come off pretty easily. There you go. Put the bolt to the side where the cap is, and now you use the crank puller. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and put the crank puller head first using the threads that are here. So go ahead and attach that. And you install it by turning it to the right. It might be a little hard to put in at first, and if you're having that problem, go ahead and use a crescent wrench. When you're screwing it in, go in gently, as you don't want to damage the threads on the arm and cause it to strip the crank arm itself, and once you do that, we're in trouble. So go ahead and use the crescent wrench to tighten it. Once you've gotten the threads in as much as you can, go ahead and start turning the bolt part of the crank puller. So you go ahead and turn it with your fingers. Once you're not able to turn it anymore, then what you want to do is you want to go ahead and use a crescent wrench and get it to turn. So this is where the tightening of the flywheel comes into play, because otherwise it'll move the crank arm with the crank puller. So there you go. Once it starts turning, that means the arm is coming off of the bike. At this point, you should be able to take it off. But go ahead and put it back in. Back up the bolt. And go ahead and take off the crank puller off of the bike, or the arm. Oh, it fell. But it should be easier for you to take off the arm now. I mean the puller. So that's how you take off the arm. Now to put it back on is pretty simple. You just reverse the steps. But before you put the arm, you want to check the orientation of the right crank. So what I mean by that is, if the right arm is pointing north, then the left side should point the opposite. In this case, being south. Keep that in mind. That's very important. So once you've got the arm set up, go ahead and tap it a couple times to make sure it's in there. Put the bolt back on. Go ahead and finger tighten it to get it going. So go ahead and tighten it. Once you've got it tight, put the cap back on. Tap a couple times, and that's it. your bike is good to go. And that's how you replace the arm, a left crank arm on the Spinner L Series bike.